Welcome to the Evolution Show. I'm Johan Landgren. I hope you're doing well. Today I'm back with a really inspiring guest for you, Anders Forslund, CEO and founder of the world-leading electric plane company, Heart Aerospace. Anders is back on the show for the fourth time to give us an update on what is happening with the Swedish startup that already has 200 orders of electric commercial planes from United and Mesa Airlines, and is growing into what may become a huge new industry here in Sweden as well as internationally. So stick around, and you don't want to miss next week's episode when I'll be back to talk about the world's first battery storage trailer, recently announced by the electric truck and logistics startup Einride, a private company I invested in back in 2018 and that already has electric autonomous trucks without even a cabin in operations in Sweden and United States. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and if you want to support the show, give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. As always, stay ahead of the curve and stay electric. This is the Evolution Show. Welcome back to the Evolution Show, Anders Forslund.
It's always great to be back. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, you are the co-founder and CEO of Heart Aerospace, and I've had the pleasure of having you on the Evolution Show 3 times over the last couple of years to talk about your super exciting electric plane that you and your team are developing here in Sweden. And for those who haven't seen our previous talks, I really recommend checking out the links. I provide them in the descriptions below. But for those who don't have a clue about what is Heart Aerospace and how can you make an electric plane, could you briefly tell us a little bit about your company?
Sure. We're Heart Aerospace. We're a Swedish startup, or a Swedish scale-up, I should say, developing an electric aircraft. Electric aircraft are obviously planes that are driven by electricity, so batteries and electric motors. They already exist, in fact. Here at our airport, it's already being used by the flight schools, but they're limited to small sizes, about two passengers. What we're trying to do is to build a commercial airliner, the world's first commercial airliner that is driven on electricity. And it's a 19-passenger aircraft called the Heart ES-19, which we're really targeting some key demographic markets, including that one in Norway, where the Norwegian government has announced that they want all domestic flights to be 100% electric by 2040, other Nordic countries, but also United States, where we have a large order, a purchase order for 200 aircraft with United Airlines, one of the world's largest airlines, and we think a global leader on decarbonization of air travel.
Yeah, and since we spoke last time, I think it was about a month after we spoke, you had a Heart ES-19 test flight, actually, of a smaller model, which I guess is, very useful. People might think, yeah, that's just a model. Could you tell us about that?
Yeah, so this was actually a project that we did. It was part of a research project that we did together with the Swedish Innovation Agency, and from a personal perspective, it was super exciting, seeing your plane up in the air, even though it's 1 to 5 scale, so it's about 5 meters in wingspan. When you're seeing it up in the air, you don't really see the difference. But from a technical point of view, what was the most exciting part about it was how unexciting it was. We've taken a design philosophy and a strategy of keeping it very simple. So we've designed a very conventional airframe. It's similar to how aircraft have looked over the last, 80 years or so. So it was, when it came to actually, adjusting it and making sure that the flight physics and the flight controls were working, it worked right out of the box. And it was, floating really nicely in the sky, traveling up to, hitting 150 kilometers per hour. And it was, the vast majority of the work here we do is formal development, and it's nothing like building, scale models. This was perhaps 1% of our budget that we spend on this, but I think it's a key learning is that there's a direct correlation with how easy it is to fly a scale model and how easy it is then to build a certified aircraft. You know, if it takes you a little resources to build and fly a scale model, that's probably because the design is inherently simple, inherently safe, and you will have little hiccups when you're trying to build a certified aircraft, which is a completely different ballgame.
Yeah. And the last time we spoke, you talked about the electric motor. You have just started to test it with the propeller and everything, and now you obviously showed with the with the test flight mini model that you had 4 nacelles and 4 engines, electric motors, I should say. Can you give us an update about the motors? Have you been working on them further on since we talked last time?
Yeah, I mean, we tested our first electric motors, I think, in 2020, and we're continuously evolving the prototypes. So we have new stuff coming out, but a big problem is that you're really taking that step from a demonstrator to a fully certifiable and a certified motor, and that's like a really strategic thing. And then it's also about ensuring supply. So making sure we have now orders for hundreds of aircraft. We have 4 motors per aircraft. And finding the strategic partners or growing our strategic partnerships to get that to get it into production organization is really what we're working on right now.
Yeah, and you have chosen to use 4 electric motors instead of 2 larger ones, and I think it's that you explained it to me before why you did that, and I think it's good to repeat that because it's kind of vital to understand.
So it's about a factor 20 in the acquisition price between an electric motor and a jet engine, and it's a factor 100 when it comes to maintenance costs. So there's a reason why there are not many small planes flying today, and it's because a jet engine is the driving part of the cost. It is cost the same whether the aircraft is 20 passengers, 30 passengers, or 70 passengers. And it's also the same whether it's, it wears the same whether it's flying, 100 kilometers or flying 1,000 kilometers. So small aircraft for short routes have always been like a bad business model. And it's also really bad for the environments because actually those are the routes that are polluting most per kilometer. So by going electric, those kind of constraints disappear, and you also create a zero emissions plane. So I think that is, it's like really important part of the value proposition. And the way to understand this, so we're presenting a new vision for how electric planes will operate. And it will not just be, we can start by replacing some old aircraft, but we're also creating a market. But it's not something that we need a crystal ball to understand, this is exactly how it's going to be. What you can do is to look at how it is today in Norway. So there they have this, large number of turboprop aircraft that are pretty small, that are flying in like a decentralized node structure, creating this very fast and flexible way for the Norwegian population to get around. And the reason that so that's really like, this is our vision for what electric planes could be. And the reason that it's working in Norway today is because it's subsidized by the Norwegian government. But when we bring in the electric into the equation, that sort of changes the economic equation in and of itself and makes it more feasible to fly these small planes and these short routes again.
Yeah, and speaking of Norway, that was one of my questions also. I mean, are you focusing on Norway because of this? They are in the lead, so to speak, and they understand the market, understand the potential for your planes. Could you say that that's kind of your key market, aside, of course, from the US with the large order there? But
this company started as identifying an opening in the market, kind of a niche market, which is these Nordic countries, which I think really best exemplified by Norway, which has this, the geographic conditions. They have the sort of environmental and environmentalist agenda, which is driving it as well, and they have the funding and the financing to pull this through. So it's like a really important market that nobody really was addressing. However, we've seen as we're growing this company that this is like a product that has a global appeal. And so there are markets in all of the Nordic countries. There are markets in the continental Europe. There's markets North America. New Zealand is really pushing through. So we're engaging with airlines all over the world. So that has been really an exciting time, and also a little bit been reflected in the composition of our team here. We have people actually coming from 5 different continents, working in actually I think it's 6 different continents, from all continents I would say, that are working, have moved here to Gothenburg, are working on our team. So it is really, I think we've become, while we haven't lost track and focus on being, establishing, being that company that establishes planes in Norway, we are, also broadening our scope a bit.
Yeah, and speaking of markets in Norway, perhaps we can just do a follow-up and talk a little bit about US. Are you still on track, so to speak, with your plan to have regional flights in the US? Is that still what you're focusing on in terms of the North Americas?
Correct. Yeah. So obviously United Airlines and Mesa Airlines made a purchase order together for 200 aircraft, and this is a massive market. So speaking just in size, the Norwegian market is like 5 million people, and the US is 330 million people. So obviously that's something that's really exciting to us. And United and Mesa are also investors in our company. So and also most of our investors are from the United States. So this remains a key focus for us. We are a European company, so obviously our primary certification authority is EASA. So we still have a little bit of combining this with a little bit of Eurocentric focus initially, but we're definitely looking to expand and capture this US market, as evidenced by our orders.
Yeah. We have to mention another exciting news since the last time we spoke is you have hired a test pilot.
Oh yeah.
Yes. So we have to mention something and talk about that. I think his name is Andrew Larkman.
Correct.
Can you tell us about what his role and what he will be doing and what he brings to the table, so to speak?
Now I think we're a few years away from flight testing, where it's going to start in 2024 really, but already now, actually flight testing. If you look at an aircraft development project, the flight testing program, the campaign, is among the most expensive, if not the most expensive part of the sort of getting an aircraft certified into market. So there's the sort of a design theory called front loading, which essentially says that, the time to save money and de-risk your project is in the early stages. Because the decisions that you make in the early stages is going to determine, they're going to be very cheap. They're going to determine the fate of the program, and they're very cheap to fix in the early stage. But when you're at the stage where you're sort of locked in on your design, you've gone through preliminary and detailed design, and you realize that something's wrong, going back all that way, changing everything upstream with all of that takes a lot of time. So what you really want to do, while you want to keep your organization lean, is to bring in the different perspectives. So getting a test pilot here, I'm sitting here in front of some of our hardware in the loop, some of our simulators, they're using this today, getting the pilot perspective there, also starting to planning for our flight test campaign and how that's going to be done. That is like of utmost importance, because this is essentially a tool for the pilot. But this is also a sort of a mindset that we're bringing also to, for instance, production. We're not a stage of mass production yet, but we have a head of production, we have a head of manufacturing, all of this stuff, to looking at the different producibility aspects of our aircraft design.
Yeah. I can just say, I mean, I think it was 15 years ago when I went to high school. My friend, his father worked at this flight simulation school in at Arlanda, SAS. So we were able to go there, me and him, and fly a 737. It was amazing. So I know, and that was, long ago. I know that obviously they are much more advanced today. And I guess that's just a small part of it, but
So I've been very strategic in framing this, so I'm showing just the right amount. But I think we've released a video online about this as well. So this is essentially a hardware in the loop. We've built a sort of representation, a mock-up of the cockpit, which is using the Garmin system. We're working together with Garmin. And actually, we're putting everything together and, essentially going on a flight in the actual plane with the actual hardware. The only problem is that, we can't put any sensors on this plane because we're not in the air. So everything has to be simulated and modeled. So we have these big racks here, or these server racks kind of from a company called Aviation, which is essentially generating the type of signal, to represent what all the sensors and probe aboard the aircraft are feeling, and that's in turn connected to a flight simulation software. So it's really like this is super, like this is a great tool that people would have have been really anxious to get their hands on in the past, but this just shows some of the things that we can do with modern technology.
Yeah, amazing. If we would like to, people might wonder during these turmoil times. I mean, you have markets going up and down. You have the Ukraine situation and so on. Have you been affected in any way in terms of perhaps getting components or even recruiting people or financially? How have you been affected by this?
No, I think that this is there's definitely ups and downs in the market, and right now we're seeing I think both the situation in Russia, I think the inflation, the way that it's rising, some of our essentially what I think what we're seeing is that there's a hype cycle to everything. Also, there's been a period where anything that's related to electrification has been very, very people have there's been a lot of room for a lot of companies to develop these types of technologies. And now we're entering into a stage where actually, the lessons learned that it's actually kind of difficult to build and certify an aircraft. I think that, so there's a lot of these, there's kind of a little bit of a process of elimination now where the concepts that do not have bearing, that do not have commercial or technical viability, certification viability, are being a little bit challenged. And it's also, so it's really like the most consequential and most important time in this development of this new technology. And I think it's not only true for aerospace, but also in all of these electrification areas. So kind of the winners are being picked a little bit. So far, we're on the heels of a very large fundraise. We have a large runway. We have the best investors in the world. So we're not directly affected that way, but obviously we're watching the market and we're paying attention to it, and we're not going on any frivolous spending. But so far, our confidence in the product that we're having and what we're doing remains kind of unperturbed.
Yeah, I would say that I like your description of a hype cycle, because that's exactly what it's been, and I think you're in a good position to come out on the other side as one of the survivors, so to speak.
This is really This is the kind of scenario that Tesla came out of, with the 2008 crisis. This is how, Google and Amazon came out of the dot-com boom and bust. Yeah. So it's like this really consequential time, which is really like you need to have all your ducks in a row and have everything in order. Yeah. But this is when the winners are being picked.
Yeah. If we perhaps then could turn a little bit to talk about the future, both for Heart Aerospace and perhaps even for the electric aviation and so on. But if you focus on your electric commercial plane, you said that it's going to be ready. You plan to have it ready by 2026. Do you think you can keep that timeline, or how do you think about the future?
Yeah, I mean, we do. And the reason is that, so an aircraft is a very complex product, and there's a lot of things that need to happen in a certain order to reach certification. How we've approached this is we really try to benchmark for the successful projects in the past. What we've seen is really the gold standard in our industry for building aircraft and delivering on time has been sort of the Embraer regional jets. So one of the things we've done is to hire a lot of that team, have them be in charge of our planning. It is very kind of there's a very scientific and peculiar method to get all these things triggering on the same time and happening on the same time. And, you know, it's aerospace. So you know, we might experience a delay, but there's nothing to suggest that it's, that we're experiencing that delay, right?
Yeah. It sounds really great. And I think I look forward to see what's going to happen with you, with your company on this, with many milestones on the way, so to speak. But okay, finally, if anybody is looking to be part of perhaps joining your team or contributing to this transition, developing electric planes, what kind of people are you hiring right now? And can you perhaps say anything of the kind of people you have on your team right now? How many are you today? Could you say anything about that?
So we're about 100 people here right now, with some more coming in. There's people from 22 different countries, 6 different continents. But we've mostly been hiring sort of experienced aerospace professionals that have done this journey in the past. So essentially what we need is somebody who's an expert in anything from, landing gears to avionics to electrical systems to mechanical systems. And also obviously the people that are not coming from aerospace that are really focused on battery technology and electromobility. But so we've been moving people from all over the world to Gothenburg, Sweden, and it's created a great dynamic atmosphere, very international. But we also recognize the need to hire younger people, to hire local talent. We have a big collaboration with Chalmers University, where I came from, and we've brought on a lot of thesis workers from there, and some of them are actually also joining our company right now. So we're also bringing in the people, passing the torch to the next generation, and it's super exciting. And obviously, we're a startup that marries 2 ideas. One is, of not reinventing the wheel and learning, taking the key learnings from the industry about how to do this, but also, challenging we're also startups, so we also need to challenge the status quo a little bit.
Yeah.
So we're trying to get that balance. And so it's a really interesting time in our recruitment process, and where people now can come and join our company, coming in from, university, etc.
Yeah, really exciting. And I look forward to hear more about what's happening with Heart Aerospace. I know that there's a lot of things going on, obviously.
A lot of things going on right now.
Yeah. So I hope to have you back on the show not too long from now. So, but thank you so much, Anders. It was exciting, and I learned a lot, and I hope people enjoyed it as much as I did. So thank you.
Oh, it's always a pleasure to come here.
I hope you enjoyed today's episode. Anders Forslund will be back on the show to tell us more about upcoming news on Heart Aerospace planes. So stay tuned for that. And I'm curious to know what you think about electric planes and Heart Aerospace. Please share what you think in the comment section below, and I'll be sure to forward your questions to Anders in upcoming episodes. Up next is another episode I really don't think you should miss. I will talk about the world's first battery storage trailer, recently announced by the electric truck and logistics company Einride. A trailer that will do much more than just increase the range for electric trucks. I will share why I think this trailer is a complete game changer in so many ways. As always, if you want to support the show, give us a thumbs up and consider subscribing. I hope to see you next week.